Are we alone in the universe? The discovery of a new planet named Gliese B12 could prove that we aren't. It might not have the same ring to it as Earth, but the similarities are striking. If life is out there, it might be on Gliese B12. Are you sick of the constant stream of negativity on social media? Well, then you've come to the right place. On this channel, we bring you the most positive stories straight to your feed every week. From a new method for predicting cancer to a group of undergrad students discovering the oldest stars in the universe. I'm your host Regis, and welcome to Good News. Join me as we count down 7 of the best news stories from all around the world. Our first story comes from the medical world, where a new patch has been developed as a measles vaccination. Measles was first detected more than 1,000 years ago, and since then it's been infecting people with a full body rash, high temperatures, red eyes, and other symptoms similar to the flu. However, measles is more than the flu. It's potentially fatal, with over 100,000 people losing their lives each year. Most of those, tragically, are the most vulnerable people in our society: children. Since a vaccine was developed in 1958, the number of measles-related deaths has been declining. 2 doses are 96% effective against the disease, which is why, over the last 2 decades, that vaccine has saved an estimated 57 million lives, according to the WHO. However, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccination levels in low-income countries dropped sharply, especially in some parts of Eastern Europe, India, and parts of Russia. A lack of access to medicine, specialists, and healthcare left the poorest populations fighting a rising tide of measles outbreaks. Now, the development of something called a microarray patch could be changing all of that. A small thumb-sized patch sticks onto the arm of a patient without them feeling a thing. It stays on for just 5 minutes and uses microscopic needles to inject the vaccine, just like a regular injection would. Early trials have shown that this new technology is completely safe to use even on babies and young children. And the biggest advantage is that they can be distributed easily, and they don't require the assistance of a doctor or nurse to deliver them. Microarray patches could be on track to become the new global standard, which is great news if you're afraid of needles. There are even more exciting things happening in medicine too, with researchers discovering that certain blood proteins can predict cancer in the future. A study carried out by Oxford scientists has found that proteins in someone's blood can predict how likely they are to develop cancer, as much as years before any symptoms appear. These tiny indicators were found after researchers combed through the blood of 44,000 people using data from the United Kingdom's biobank. The study was also able to verify that over 10% of those people went on to develop some kind of cancer after they gave blood. By identifying the common features, patterns began to emerge. Researchers narrowed down 618 proteins that seemed to correlate with a wide variety of cancers. Amazingly, 107 of those were already detectable in blood samples 7 years before the patients were diagnosed. I wonder what other kind of information our blood is keeping secret. Can it reveal if I'm going to lose my hair? More importantly though, these findings open up the possibility of treating the cancer before it even emerges in the body, which could be the new frontier of treatment. For example, it could be combined with targeted therapy, which is a way to treat cancer by attacking specific proteins that make tumors grow and spread. Data from this latest study might enable scientists to be more precise in these attacks and for much earlier treatment. For our next story, we shift our attention to an interesting innovation in the construction industry, where a new method for low-carbon cement has been discovered. Most of the world is built with concrete, which requires cement as the main ingredient. The amount of cement used each year has now reached 4 billion tons. That's like stacking the Great Pyramid of Giza on top of itself more than 600 times. Unfortunately, this is devastating for the environment, generating 2.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide each year, or 8% of global emissions. That means that if concrete were a country, it would be the 3rd biggest polluter in the world, between the United States and India. I think a concrete state would be able to build some pretty strong alliances, don't you think? It's all because the process required to create cement involves crushing up a mixture of materials like limestone and shale, burning it at over 1400 degrees Celsius in a furnace called a kiln, before finally grinding it together with additional minerals. Byproduct of this chemical process is carbon dioxide, especially at the stage when the raw materials are transformed into a product called clinker. To tackle the issue, scientists at Cambridge University have come up with a novel solution. Firstly, the team uses more environmentally friendly electric arc furnaces, which are usually used in steelmaking. When running on renewable energy, electric arc furnaces are non-carbon emitting. Secondly, they substituted the lime with the cement paste created from recycling old waste concrete. That way, the creation of clinker is essentially zero carbon. This change could be groundbreaking for the construction industry, offering a cheap alternative that could be used to meet the ever-increasing demand for concrete. The team responsible for the technology, Cambridge Electric Cement, is now working to scale it to make construction a more environmentally sustainable industry. The first test will use a full-scale industrial electric arc furnace, which the team estimates can produce around 30 tons of cement each hour. That's a small step towards implementing the system on a bigger scale, which in the coming decades could churn out 1 billion tons a year. That would be a quarter of the current global demand. In similar environmental news, over in India, the fight to save one of the country's most biodiverse forests has succeeded. The story centers around the battle for the rights to India's Hasdeo Forest, located in the state of Chhattisgarh. Hasdeo Forest is home to traditional villagers, endangered species, rare trees, and wildlife that stretches over 1,800 square kilometers. That's almost 1.5 times the size of Hong Kong. Sadly, rather than its pristine natural attractions, multi-billion-dollar companies have been fighting to secure the rights to what's underneath, an estimated 5 billion tons of coal. In 2011, 18 square kilometers of the forest was allocated for mining. A couple of years later, the global coal company Adani was given the green light to start digging. This was only the first phase, with a further 21 blocks auctioned off to companies 9 years later. In protest, villagers and activists walked over 300 kilometers, campaigning for the government to put a pause on all coal mining in the area. The 18,000 villagers who inhabit the area have traditionally depended on the land for food and shelter, many of whom were being forced to resettle in makeshift accommodations. These protests, along with an online campaign and a Supreme Court challenge, formed a 12-year fight that involved 30 state members being suspended from Congress and a Washington Post investigation revealing deep government corruption. Now, this sounds like a Netflix documentary waiting to happen. If you'd watch it, let us know down in the comments. Eventually though, in 2022, the state assembly canceled all 21 mines, saving 1,800 square kilometers of the rich, delicate Hasdeo Forest. While some Indian officials have been determined to tear down the environment, America is stepping into a new age of green energy with a brand new electrical grid. Government agencies have warned for years that areas with outdated fossil energy plants are expected to fail in coming years, causing more frequent blackouts. The White House has announced plans to invest tens of billions of dollars into a federal-state modern grid deployment initiative. The plan to brace for the future will revolutionize the electrical grid and do two things. Firstly, minimize and reduce electricity shortages, and secondly, transition away from fossil fuel-dependent electricity by attaching renewable energy projects. It's part of an effort to upgrade aging electrical grids, which are networks used both by companies and consumers to allocate electricity to the right place at the right time. The demand for electricity is projected to surge over the next decade as data centers and computing power accelerate with the advent of artificial intelligence. AI already uses an enormous amount of energy, and the figures are only increasing. Just to train OpenAI's ChatGPT-3 took 1,300 megawatt hours, about equal to the usage of 130 homes in the United States. Other than rising electricity demands, the problem is that clean power has been growing faster than the government has been building transmission lines, partly because states haven't been able to agree on who should pay for it. Biden's plan will rely on partners like states and energy providers to help construct these power lines, connecting major regions of the country. The initiative has already secured a pact with 21 different states, including California, New York, Michigan, Washington, and Hawaii. Over the next 5 years, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm wants to build over 160,000 kilometers of transmission lines to make this happen. For perspective, if those were laid out straight, they'd be enough to wrap around the Earth more than 4 times. For our next story, let's look up into the skies. where researchers have discovered some of the universe's oldest stars. In a recently published astronomical study, 3 stars that may be the oldest stars in the universe have been found much closer than anyone imagined. They're circling our galaxy, the Milky Way, approximately 30,000 light-years from Earth, which in space terms is basically next door. The age of these 3 stars has been calculated to be between 12 and 13 billion years, making them almost 3 times older than the Earth itself. Astonishingly, that's almost as old as the entire universe. The 3 recently found stars are being called small accreted stellar system. Accreted means pulled in from somewhere because researchers believe the stars were likely once part of their own independent galaxy before the Milky Way absorbed them. The breakthrough actually came out of a university course where one of the researchers was instructing students on observational stellar archaeology. As part of the course, a group of undergrad students found that these very 3 stars were strong candidates for being very old, based on their low levels of iron, strontium, and barium. As it turned out, the students were right. Now, if that doesn't earn you good grades, I don't know what will. Our final story takes us much closer to Earth, but still very much in space, where an exciting Earth-sized planet has been discovered. Astronomers have named the newly discovered exoplanet Gliese 12b, and it might be suitable for life. Since planets don't beam any light out into the universe like stars, astronomers have to rely on measuring small changes in nearby stars' brightness. From that, they can calculate the characteristics of these exoplanets. Using these methods, a group of astronomers identified that Gliese 12b is 40 light-years away, about the same size as Earth, and that the temperature appears to be sitting around 42 degrees Celsius. For our American viewers, that translates to just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. While that's pretty hot for us Earthlings, it's still in the range that our bodies can withstand. Gliese 12b is the latest of more than 5,000 similar exoplanets and is a neighbor of the Pisces constellation. It was discovered with the TESS Space Observatory, a transiting survey satellite designed specifically for identifying exoplanets. The next step is to analyze in more detail using a bigger space telescope, like the James Webb Space Telescope. Researchers now want to determine how suitable the atmosphere might be for life. So it might possibly be a future home for us. Or maybe it's already an existing one for an alien life form out there. Anyways, which good news story was your favorite? Have any pieces of good news caught your eye recently? For those interested, you can check out our sources for every story in this video in the first link of the description. Thank you for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.